It's like you have a new point of view,
Yeah.
completely new point of view. Like, where are they at when I'm standing in the front? Oh, that's cool. That's really
Yeah, and
cool.
just like doing it, like I'm in a position suddenly where I can stand up, and I almost feel like that's a
Ah,
moment that's shared between us
yeah, that's
more
right.
than anything else, you
Yeah.
know?
How are you guys doing
What's
today?
up, Graham? Doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. I
Good.
just finished the season earlier today. I had such a blast. I loved the new
Good.
episode so much. um, Julia, Della went through a lot last season with the Dodson case, losing EB, juggling her personal life, the workload, her desire to become a lawyer. How would you describe her mindset heading into season two?
Well, as you said, I mean, Della, there was this huge journey, and I think it ended in a really good place for Della of feeling like finally she might have a seat at the table and finally be able to move her desk into the main office. And then we begin season two, and none of that has really happened. So they've been in this period of inertia where Perry is acting very strangely, and she can't get a read on where he is. And they've made this decision, per Perry's lead, of not following criminal cases anymore and just practicing civil law. And I think it's frustrating. So Della begins the season being very determined to kind of move forward and keep things moving, but is really confused and frustrated about how stuck the firm is. So it's a great sort of point from which we launch off into what happens next.
So much happens. And it was, Chris, it was so good seeing Paul off the force working with Perry and Della. We got that moment at the end of season one where it was like the dream team comes together. It took a bit to get there, but we get to see you kind of in that investigator role, uncovering some startling truths. I gasped. But what was it like, to like explore that side of Paul, because it's almost as if, does he feel an obligation to Perry after what happened last season, or is this his like kind of just inner sense of justice coming forward and wanting to find a way to maybe right the wrong of the police officers that he worked for before?
I actually think it's neither one of those things.
Okay.
I think that Paul is trying his best to survive and was perfectly happy with the shitty justice pre Perry Mason. But what Perry did is awaken in him more of himself. He revealed Paul to himself. And so it's like this monster that's like, well, shit, now that everybody realizes that I'm good at these things, I want to use these things. And I think Paul isn't thinking so much as he's surviving. From the moment he meets Perry, he's surviving. And it's really, I mean, it'd be cool if he was a guy who was like, yeah, justice. Not really. It's very much, can I feed my family and not get killed in the process? And it just so happens that justice lives on what Paul is good at, and he's good at some forms of detective work. And unfortunately, that happens to work with the justice system. But I think if Paul had his druthers, he'd be an accountant in the back room somewhere, and you'd never see this guy. No one would know who he is.
Meanwhile, Della loves being in the spotlight. You get the big moment in the courtroom this season, which I was a showstopper in my opinion. So how did you like prepare for that moment, considering that it really speaks not only to the underlying themes of the season, but also last season with Mrs. Dodson and how women are treated by the justice system?
Really love the way that scene just kind of emerged. I didn't know for a long time that we were going to do it. And then in the writing, I love the fact that it's not planned and it sort of just comes out of the need of the moment, which is suddenly Della realizes I have more information than Perry does on the floor. And actually, me being a woman, it's one of the few moments where me being a woman is actually a positive in this story, that it needs to come from a woman. And it might just be the thing that gets us what we want. And so that was really thrilling. I thought the way that Michael and Jack built that moment was spectacular. But the other thing that I loved about it, which happened all the way through the season, was our relationships, Perry, Matthew, Paul, Chris, and me. Everything was about how we interact with each other and how we relate to each other. And for me, the big moment in the courtroom was moments leading up to that where I've been having these moments from season 1 of looking at Paul, of Della looking at Paul and clocking like what's happening in the room and where we sit, where he sits, and where the other women sit in that room. And so for me, that was the most meaningful thing, is checking those little looks, glances between everyone leading up to that.
It's like you have a new point of view.
Yeah.
Completely new point of view. Like, where are they at when I'm standing in the front? Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
And just like doing it, like I'm in a position suddenly where I can stand up, and I almost feel like that's a moment that's shared between us.
Yeah, that's right.
More than anything else, you know?
And you probably never thought you'd ever get to see the world from that point.
Never.
Whoa. That's good.
It was fun.
That's good.
Scary.
And speaking of different perspectives, Chris, I loved exploring more of Paul's life as well, his home life. The sequence with Clara was thrilling and amazing to watch, all of the sequences with Clara. But and so I was just so curious, how fun was it to dig into this aspect of the character, and how much did you kind of play a role in crafting this community that Paul is a part of?
There were some, although mostly not fun, just because it's all so very heavy. Poor Paul, everything is just life or death. And this poor guy has to deal with the misfortunes of racism in the 30s. And that's just every step is potentially death. So it was, I guess to be fair, being in the room with that family when it was like me and Mo and Pearl and Jara and the babies and their kids, it was chaos, but it was so much fun because it really did feel like I grew up in a largely Black neighborhood where we would just go into a house and play cards all day. And so revisiting those moments and seeing how they kind of just come back, it's kind of a fabric of some parts of society. I don't know that I answered the question, though.
I think you did.
It was a beautiful answer regardless.
Yeah. I guess, and yes is the answer to whatever question I was meant to be answering. Twice.
Amazing. Well, that is my time today, but let me
You can't leave us on that.
But thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you guys, and I really loved the season. So
thank you so much.
Again.
Thank you.